Imagine if one question could change the trajectory of your entire life. I'm talking about the question that had me quit my successful job, book a one-way flight across the world to Paris, and create a life and a business that I used to dream of. If you right now are in a phase of trying to figure out what's next or just at a crossroads and feeling that inner pull, this video is for you. I'm going to be breaking down the question you want to be asking yourself and what are the steps you want to take once you have the answer? If this is your first time here, my name is Tanya Bravo. I'm a business and mindset coach, and I help amazing individuals like you realize and actualize their full potential so that we can create the life that is literally waiting for us. If that's you, go ahead and click that subscribe button and let's dive in. June 2017, I was at drinks with a friend, and she asked me a question that I think we all should ask not only ourselves, but people around us. And that one simple, life-changing question is, what is something you've always wanted to do, but you've never said out loud? Now, hold on a second. That very first thought that came to your mind, that's the thing. Because what we often do is we try to think our way through questions like this and push down what is our true desire. And so the very first thing that came to mind, I almost even want you to just pause the video for just a second and go write that down. Even if it doesn't make sense, go and write that down. Your intuition always knows the answer. So how did that question change my life? The first thing that came to my mind, and I cannot believe I actually said it out loud because I hadn't admitted it outwardly to anyone other than my journal prior to her, was I've always wanted to move to Paris. And she responded and said, "Oh my gosh, I just got goosebumps. You have to do it." Now, let me take you back to what my life looked like in June 2017. I had climbed what we are taught is this amazing corporate ladder. And so I had a great job. I lived and worked in New York City, but I traveled all around the world. I used to do brand marketing and events for Fortune 500 companies. And I had it all on paper. I was not even 30 yet. I'd already bought a home. I'd done a lot of things that I was privileged to be able to do and accomplish by working really hard and checking the boxes that society tells us will bring us fulfillment. But I was not. I was not fulfilled. I was unhappy. I was going to work crying and coming home crying. I was getting over 300 emails a day and completely burnt out working 80 hours a week. And there was also a sense of guilt because I'm supposed to be happy. This is what everyone has told me would bring me happiness. So how dare I not feel happy? And this isn't to say that I didn't have moments of fun and enjoyment and excitement and love and support in my life. Of course I did. I was not, miserably depressed, but I just knew there is something more for me and I couldn't put the words on it. I mean, how many of you are climbing a ladder that maybe was never yours to begin with? And I'm not just talking about a corporate ladder. I mean the life that you were building. Is it yours, or is it the expectations and desires and just the very next step that has been placed in front of you, not the next step that you have chosen with your desires, with your dreams that we often bury down? Because let's be honest, we're afraid. We're afraid of failure. We're afraid of being judged. We're afraid of looking dumb. And that is what led me on this path of living a life that was not mine. It was mine for a moment, but that had passed. And I want to invite you to really reflect on what this question brings up for you and the life you're building. And my friend asking me that question and me actually acknowledging out loud this hidden desire that I had, that, by the way, wasn't tied to a specific career path. There was no rhyme or logical sense of, I want to move to Paris and start a business. No, that is what ended up happening, but that was not my thought process at the time. I'd visited Paris and I loved it. Something about the energy there. I just always felt at home there. And so her asking me that question almost put a spotlight on what I was not allowing myself to admit to myself, not even her, just to myself. And I want you to think about what came up for you when you pondered that question for yourself, maybe even unknowingly, just by me saying, what is something you've always wanted to do that you've never said out loud? Something is going to come to your mind, and your logical brain may kick in and say, no, it's not that. Let me think about it. You probably don't need to think about it. It is the thing that first pops up, and it may sound irrational. It may even be something that's not even feasibly possible in today's society. Doesn't matter. Write that down. And I'm going to tell you why in a second. So, me answering that question to my friend and her excitement about it had all of this resistance come up. I immediately was like, no, I can't move to Paris. I have a job. I have a mortgage. My whole life is here. I don't know anyone in Paris. I don't speak enough French to get by. But in the days that followed, what I started to realize was that I had a lot of excuses, but there was also some excitement that had been ignited by that question. And I didn't know where the answer to that question was going to lead me, but I knew I was feeling excitement. And there was also, every time I would start to feel the excitement, all of these excuses. Again, at the time, they didn't feel like excuses. They felt like real reasons. I do have a job. I do have a mortgage. But in hindsight, I now know that those are really excuses to keep me playing small and stuck and confused on what to do next. That one question for the next 6 months took me on an emotional, a mental, a spiritual journey unlike any other. And almost 6 months to the day, I booked a one-way flight to Paris. Moving to Paris is where I met my husband 3 weeks after landing in Paris with 2 suitcases and going to an Airbnb, not knowing what I was going to do next. Going to Paris is where I spent those first 3 months in Paris in cafes, working on this dream of wanting to create a platform to inspire and empower individuals and brought that to life. I also just want to caveat that before answering that question, I was at a place of knowing I wanted to do more, be more, have more than just check the boxes and climb the ladder, but not knowing what that was. And I think sometimes we are waiting to figure out the business plan or figure out, okay, I'm going to move to Paris and do what? And all the steps of the plan without just doing the very next thing that is exciting in front of us, which was the answer to that question. I've always wanted to move to Paris. And so by me releasing what's my purpose and what is my business idea and how is it going to make money and what's my profit margin and who is my ideal client, and just focusing on, oh, I really want to go to Paris. What if I just went and see what happens? Now, obviously, there were some logistical things that have to happen during those 6 months, but that question sparked the possibility of it for me. And I just want to speak to the person right now who's like, I can't do that. I can't quit my job. I can't move to another country, whatever your thing is, right? And maybe the answer to that question was something very trivial that you're kind of confused on how that would even change your life. I want to offer to you that it is almost even less about the thing that is your response to that and what the action of taking action on that thing will then bring to you. Because the people, opportunities, lessons, experiences that were a result of me taking action on the thing I've always wanted to do but never said out loud were ultimately what I was looking for. That's the thing that completely changed the trajectory of my life. And again, your answer may not be as big as quitting your job and moving to another country. It might be something really small. It might be something even bigger. And you may even be questioning, well, how is this tied to what I really want overall? Or how is it going to change my life or my career or my love life? Don't ask those questions right now, because if I would have went into it in terms of I want to move to Paris and I want to find the love of my life and I want to start a business and here's the business I want to start, I probably would have never went. I just took the very next step, even if it doesn't make logical sense. How can I take the very next step possible that feels exciting and a little bit scary? Literally within a month of having that conversation with a friend, I started a Paris fund. So instead of going out to eat every weekend and champagne brunches with my friends and shopping at Zara every week, I was putting a lot of money aside to a Paris fund that I invented. Now, I didn't really at the time believe that I was really going to move to Paris in 6 months. No, absolutely not. But she ignited an excitement in me and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I said, what's the worst that can happen? What if I could stop all unnecessary spending? How much could I save? And I actually took some time to research the cost of living in Paris. So, I didn't just put my head in the sky and not have a plan, but I wasn't focused on what am I going to do when I get there. It was just, okay, how do I get myself to Paris? First, it was creating the Paris fund. Then it was starting to tell more family and friends about, hey, I'm thinking about moving to Paris, and actually being able to verbalize this thing that had been buried inside of me for so long because I was so terrified to say it. Because what if I never do it? What if it's not possible? How would I do it? So I really just focused on the very next steps. I remember giving my notice to my job and being absolutely terrified because, again, I didn't have a plan for how I was going to make money in Paris. My business did not exist yet. There was no business. And as I said, little things did start to fall in place, though, where I was getting help along the way. And I want to offer that to you as well, that whatever your answer to that question is really doesn't matter, because that's probably not the end all be all, this is your purpose, but it's probably the very next step to starting to live within your purpose. And as I said, about 6 months after that conversation, I booked that one-way flight. And a couple months later, I was on my way to Paris by myself, didn't know anyone. And that one decision completely changed my life. As I said, met my husband 3 weeks after moving there, after being on the dating struggle bus of LA and New York for years. I spent the 6 months of my savings figuring out this dream of building a platform and community and business that now has become the Bravo Life. And I have now worked with over 1,000 clients, helping them build purpose-driven businesses. I host retreats all around the world for hundreds of women at this point. And this has now become my life's work. I have more than replaced what was that successful job salary. And so what do you want to do after you have the answer to the question? Well, first, as I said before, you want to write it down. You don't just want to write it. I want you to feel it. Really feel, visualize, sit with that, even if it's just for 60 seconds. Don't just write it haphazardly. Really sit in it and imagine, what would that be like? Without needing to know exactly how, what would that be like? And if you start to feel a little bit of excitement and fear, that is your go sign. Then step 2, I want you to write down any small steps you can take towards that. It could be researching. It could be just sharing with your best friend. It could be reaching out to find or connect with a mentor or someone else who's already done it. Do you need to take some time out of your calendar each week to just work on this project? Do you need to connect with other people? Do you need to start just verbalizing it even to yourself and others of, hey, this is something I really want to do? Because again, when you take that very first step, the other steps start to appear. Hey, I know this person, I can connect you here. But when we're quiet and we want to move in silence, nothing happens. In step 3, as I said, you likely are going to feel excitement, but you're also going to feel some fear. And so I want you to acknowledge that fear. You don't want to just ignore it because it's not going away. I always say, fear, you can come along for the ride, but I'm in the driver's seat. You got to sit in the back. So who's driving the car, me or fear? I get to drive. And so I'm not going to pretend like I'm not afraid, but I'm also going to acknowledge the fear, and then I'm going to find ways to reframe it into positive energy, into excitement, into joy, into how can I look at this as an opportunity instead of doom and gloom and it's never going to work. But what if it can work? What if is often a very easy way to reframe something that you have resistance to. So instead of, I'm definitely going to move to Paris and I'm going to become a full-time entrepreneur, what if I move to Paris? I could get behind that. And what if there's something for me in Paris? I can get behind that, right? And just easing your way there without needing to know the end all be all. Because again, I could have never imagined that I would have all of this now 7 years after making that one-way flight. I couldn't have imagined. Again, this has now completely transformed my life. This question still shapes how I show up in life and my business. When I talk about the idea of fear and excitement, that truly is my guiding light. It is even the reason why I started this YouTube channel, which again, I only started posting consistently on here 3 weeks ago. And my third video as of recording this has, I think, 7,000 views, which is mind-blowing, because while I have a community and have built a community in my email list and my Instagram off of YouTube, coming to YouTube was scary. And it was something that I've always wanted to do. I have always wanted to create content on YouTube, and I procrastinated for a very long time out of fear. But I decided to lean into that excitement, tell fear to get in the back seat. And thanks to all of you incredibly new people finding me, I've already seen the gift of stepping into that, of just following the very next step, showing up here, sometimes knowing what I'm doing, sometimes not knowing what I'm doing, and trusting that the right humans like yourself will find me. Now, I really want you to remember that the answer to this question is the beginning. It is the key to unlock the door. And then we've got to turn the handle and we've got to open the door and we've got to put one foot in and the next foot. But don't worry about all of those steps. Just put the key in the door. Answer that question in your journal. Feel the feelings and start to get clear on what are some small steps I can take in the next 24 hours, in the next week. What are they? And I want to give everyone watching this a little challenge, and I want to invite you to comment down below your answer to that. And you're probably going to feel a little bit of fear in doing that because even though you probably don't know anyone in this comment section, it's scary to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. And what if this sounds silly or ridiculous? That's exactly why you should write it down, because verbalizing that and actually admitting it not only to the world, but to yourself first will be the key to completely stepping into the life that is literally waiting for you. If this video was helpful for you, I would greatly appreciate it if you would click the button below to subscribe, like, and please comment and share this with a friend. I do not take any view for granted. I know that you have taken time out of your day and I appreciate you. And I can't wait to read the comments below about what is something that you've always wanted to do, but you've never said out loud.